Hello, welcome to Political Forum for this Wednesday, June 11th, 2014. Please join me in welcoming our guest for today, Alderman Proco Joe Moreno of the 1st Ward. Alderman, thank you for appearing on Political Forum.
Thank you, Monica. Appreciate it.
Political Forum is brought to you as a community service by CAN TV. I'm your host for today, Monica Torres Linares, a CAN TV board member. This is a live and interactive show, so during the next 25 minutes, if you have any questions or comments for Alderman Moreno, please call us at 312-738-1060. Alderman, before we go into the show, I just want to thank you for joining in with the 47 other colleagues in support of the letter that Alderman John Pope sent to Comcast last week.
Of course.
The letter says that we, the undersigned members of the Chicago City Council, oppose any cable franchise renewal agreement with Comcast that does not include an acceptable deal for CAN TV. We call on Comcast to meet its obligations under the cable ordinance without further delay by reaching an agreement for support of CAN TV at a level that meets or exceeds the terms of the RCN agreement approved by the City Council in 2012. Alderman, we thank you for standing up for the public channels.
Of course.
Do you have any comments that you want to say to the public?
Well, sure. I mean, public access is a crucial form of communication, and it is something that we absolutely need to protect and grow. Different constituencies and community entities that are able to leverage television that wouldn't be able to otherwise through the private sector. And let's remember, the airwaves are the people's airwaves, even when it comes to cable. And we already have a good blueprint. RCN, as you mentioned in the letter, has already come to a good agreement with CAN TV, and we're not asking, we'd like to have more from Comcast, but we're not asking for anything more. So I think it's very fair, and I'm very hopeful that we'll come to a good resolution, and the board of directors at CAN TV will be approving it, but we'll see.
Thank you, Alderman. Alderman, please tell us about yourself.
Well, I was actually born in Moline, Illinois, which is about 3 hours west of the city of Chicago, and I came here out of college to the ward about 16 years ago. My grandparents came from Mexico, had my dad here. My dad married my mother, who grew up in a farm town in central Illinois, so we grew up with not a lot of money, but a lot of love and inspiration. When I came to the city right out of college, I had a job that had nothing to do with politics, but I was very involved in local organizations like the Wicker Park Committee, Humboldt Park Social Services. I was on the board of that, fighting for affordable housing. I was elected to the local school council at Diego, one of the first ward schools. And that was really my passion outside of my business passion. So in 2010, then Mayor Daley appointed me to be alderman, and I won election in 11 with 74% of the vote. I love this job. I love the ward. It's one of the most diverse wards in the city. 53% Latino, so it is a Latino majority ward in the remap, but we've got a great, diverse community, and I'm very humbled to be able to serve.
Thank you, Alderman, for that. Tell us a little bit about the new ward map.
Sure. So it's, that's the old ward map that you have up there, actually. The new ward map is not that much different. It basically extends farther into the northwest and southeast. And again, the MALDUF, the Mexican American Legal Defense Fund, there are two protected classes in the Voting Rights Act. That is African Americans and Latinos. We're kind of paying for the sins of our fathers and grandfathers, where they used to not separate collections of Latinos and of African Americans, so they would not be able to elect someone that they of who they wanted to, or they would pack them all into one district so they could only have one representative, and that both of those are now illegal. So the MALDUF called for 13 Latino wards based on the census. They asked for the first ward to continue to be a Latino ward, and in order to do that, our numbers had gone down to about 35% Latino. We needed to extend the ward a little northwest and southeast to make it a majority Latino ward, and that's what we did.
Great. Thank you for that. Mm-hmm. Alderman, tell us about the latest news in the ward.
Well, we've got great things going on, and so I'm obviously biased, but we've got, great. The great thing about the ward is it's not, a lot of me. There's a lot of great community organizations that representing the neighborhoods that I really partner with. One thing I'm very proud of is I passed citywide ordinance, and it's called trans-orientated development. This concept is that we have denser developments, right, closer to our Blue Line, our L system and bus system. What that does is it allows for denser development. We had a dilapidated Pizza Hut at Ashland Division for a decade or more. The only thing under our prior zoning that could be built there was another one-story Pizza Hut, McDonald's, a bank. We now have a 99-unit, 11-story, very modern development there. 10 of the units are affordable under the affordable rental arrangement with the city, so we have 10 very affordable units there. And no parking, because it's based on people in our city today that don't want a car, don't have a car, don't desire a car. And I worked very close with the East Village Association on that in support of that. So that's one small thing. There's many others.
Great. Thank you, Alderman. We have a caller on the line. Caller, what is your question?
Yeah, speaking of people without cars, I don't have a car and I live in the area, but I was wondering what the status is of the bus rapid transit on Ashland. Is that going to happen? Is it stuck in committee? I haven't heard about it in a while.
Sure. Well, it's not. One thing to be clear about the BRT is that it's actually an issue, something that the CTA is pushing, not the alderman. So we won't have a vote on whether that goes through. But we do have a position, obviously, and we have a responsibility. BRT in general, I support bus rapid transit in general, the idea, the concept of that, where you don't have the dollars to build more rail, but you use a system that's going to get people places quicker and faster. I don't believe the plans that I've seen right now today that I could support it on Ashland Avenue through my ward. There's just too many sacrifices that need to be made. And let's be clear, when BRT does come to an area, there are sacrifices. But I think the Ashland area perhaps is not the best, and I have encouraged the CTA, because they looked at Western as well, to relook at Western Avenue, which goes through my ward as well, and to take a look at that thoroughfare, because I think it makes a little more sense than Ashland. Good question.
Thank you, caller, for that question. Alderman, tell us about any legislation that you've helped pass.
Sure. So I'm very proud. I think one responsibility of aldermen, and I think historically have not taken this, is to push their own initiatives, not just to say yes to the mayor or no to the mayor, but to push their own citywide initiatives. And we had an historic one that passed just 2 months ago, which was the ban on plastic bags in the city of Chicago. I authored that. I introduced it. We built support over almost 3 years. And we used 3 billion, Monica, 3 billion with a B plastic bags. They're poor for our environment. They get stuck on our trees, in our sewers. They cost taxpayers money to be cleaned up. They're not recycled. That's a myth. And many countries, cities, and states are already moving in that direction. And we're the largest city to pass this in Chicago, and will go into effect next August.
Great. Thank you, Alderman.
Absolutely.
I believe we have another caller on the line. Caller, what is your question?
Alderman Moreno, I'm wondering if you legitimately think that with a 99-unit apartment building that you approved, do you legitimately think that there will be 0 cars added, or that there won't be a sizable amount of cars added that will add to the already limited amount of parking that's in that area?
Sure. Very good question, something that we talked about a lot during the development. The lease, and it's stated to the folks that are signing up that they will not be able to get an exemption from my office to park on the side street. It's permitted, so they would have to get a permit from myself. They will not get an exemption for that, and they're told obviously when they sign their lease that that they are not, there's not room for their car. They actually can lease a spot across the street for additional dollars. Today there's a lot that they can lease from. They're told that, but otherwise they will not be able to park. We've got again, permitted parking, metered parking. We have every single unit except for, I believe, 1 or 2 of the 99 is already full. I literally, to the caller, I've had 1 unit that has lobbied my office for that permit. Not one other person has. And in fact, the bike room that's built inside is at capacity, and the developer is going to add more. So stay tuned, but as of now, we have not seen a big problem on that issue whatsoever.
Thank you, caller, for that question. We have another caller on the line. Caller, what is your question?
Hi, Alderman, for the last 4 years, residents have been asking you about a stop sign that you said that you would add to the corner of Chicago and Hoyne.
Okay.
It continues to be a big safety concern. Is there a date set for the stop sign to finally be installed?
So there is. The problem with the challenge with the signs is that not that we get the legislation passed, not that we appropriate the dollars, in this case from dollars that I appropriated. The challenge is once that's all done, our sign shop has 2 to 4 people hanging all of the signs in the city of Chicago. No parking, handicapped, you name it. We only have 4 individuals. At one point, 10 years ago, before I was an alderman, and I went down to the sign shop and toured it and talked to the director, we had 19 to 25 people every day that would do this. So I'm still committed to it. I know it's probably not the best answer that you want, but I also want to be honest with you. It's something that I've already appropriated dollars for, and we should be announcing that along with a variety of other signs and other packages that we're doing within the next month or so. And if you do, all the listeners, I send a weekly newsletter out on Thursdays. You can sign up for it at Ward at my website at www.aldermanmoreno.com. And it's very informative, or ward1.org, the website that's up now. You can sign up for it there as well. We announce a lot of things in that, and so please stay tuned, but we're moving forward with that.
Thank you, caller, for that question. Alderman, tell us about the schools in your district.
Well, we have. I used to be on the local school council, as I mentioned, at a neighborhood school, D. Diego. We have great schools in the first ward. We have lots of good public schools that are great choices for parents, and I have 2 high schools and 13 elementary schools, and we have some challenge schools as well, but we're working with them. And I want to note something else I wanted to talk about that's pretty historic. I live about a block and a half away from Clemente High School. Clemente has been on probation for 14 years. We had about 600, 700 students going there. The capacity is 3,200. Of the 600 or 700, 80% of them lived outside of our neighborhood, right? When I first came in to be alderman, I said to CPS, I want to do something about Clemente today. And I proposed the idea of having an international baccalaureate curriculum, which is very successful for the whole school, for the whole neighborhood to come to. CPS, as they usually do, said, no, that can't be done. Long story short, we have the first international baccalaureate curriculum wall-to-wall started this past fall. Clemente is now a level 2 school, a year before we thought they would be there. The attrition rate has leveled off. And that's not the end goal, is obviously to be a level 1 school. And people are starting to talk more and more about that. Moose School and D. Diego School now have IB curriculum because of the Clemente push that we did. And so the children will be ready to go into that curriculum. I'm very excited about it, and not giving up on our public schools, because we've got great teachers, we've got great principals, and my responsibility is to find the appropriate funding and the political will to bring programs like the IB program to Clemente.
Thank you, caller, for that question. We have another caller on the line. Caller, what is your question?
Hi, Alderman. I'm not positive where ward lines fall now, especially with old ward, new ward business, but on Wood Street between North Avenue and Milwaukee, there are way too many stop signs. And these are side streets that come in to Wood that just don't require that, I don't believe. But if you don't mind making note of that and taking that back to the office, it's a street I have to go on a lot, and it's a pain.
I got it.
The other quick thing I'd just add before you respond is that I hope that you will never permit parking on the park, particularly in an area like Wicker Park where you have the little triangular park. Mm-hmm. I know there are going to be always people who say restrict, 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 but we want there to be some free, open parking spaces left in this city, and I think around parks is an obvious place for that.
Absolutely. Well, 2 good points. The first, now we had a caller that wants a stop sign and some that wants them removed. So that's the position that Alderman put in, and I volunteered for it. So it's interesting in different areas. So to the caller's point, Wood Street, another terrible intersection with Milwaukee. I appropriated menu funding, and we're finally having the construction start to have a perpendicular cross section there with a bump out. With some greenery. It's going to be fantastic. It's going to new lighting, international striping. It's going to make a nightmare intersection a lot better. As you go farther north, as the caller mentioned, my ward does cut off basically where the Beechwood Tavern is there at Beach, and the northern portion of that is in the new 2nd Ward. However, that doesn't mean that we can't take a look at those signs, because I would love to, if it makes sense and CDOT supports it, to take down 2 signs and then put them over at Chicago and Hoyne and not have to wait for the sign shop. So thanks for that suggestion. Secondly, I lived 2 blocks from Wicker Park. I moved there, as I said, out of college to that community. The Wicker Park Committee is something I used to be a part of. we must keep, as you said, around the parks available for citizens of our ward and, quite frankly, our whole city to be able to visit and enjoy the park. So that won't happen. I also have a policy in my office that anybody that wants permit parking must beat a threshold of 65% of the VIN car owners that are on those streets. And it's kind of a hard, we make it a little difficult because it's a little difficult threshold to pass. But parking in Chicago, Monica, I'm telling you, people have huge opinions. Some love permit parking, some absolutely hate it. Some, want to see more permit parking and want to see it totally eliminated. Businesses, some actually like the meters because they get turnover and they get more customers. Some businesses absolutely want them, obviously, to get rid of. So parking in Chicago, Chicagoans and First Warders are not shy about their opinions on parking, so I appreciate it.
Thank you, caller, for that question. You're watching Political Forum, a community service by CAN TV. I'm your host for today, Monica Torres Linares. If you have any comments or questions for Alderman Moreno, please call us at 312-738-1060. Alderman, tell us about tax increment financing.
TIF, sure. So TIF districts, I think, created for the right reasons. That's been, ironic, not ironically abused in the city of Chicago, and they were created to help keep local tax dollars in communities of blight, of need, right? So that they would, the tax amount would be frozen, that would go to the different municipality, the schools, the parks, and the increment, hence the name, then would go right back to the district that's drawn. And this was not just in Chicago, but the state of Illinois and across the country, looked at as a tool 30 years ago, maybe longer, to deal with some of the blight in tough areas so we could bring tax dollars back in for economic development and other things. Well, unfortunately, what's happened in Chicago is that those TIF districts don't only exist in blighted areas. They exist downtown. They exist by the merchandise mart. And what they do is siphon off tax dollars that should be going to the parks, the schools, etc., and are used for development in non-blighted areas. And that's an abuse, in my opinion, of TIF dollars. So I joined with 10 or 11 other aldermen in voting to release the TIF's money to the schools in total. Unfortunately, it was a controversial vote. We only got 10 or 11 votes for it because I feel at this time that's what's appropriate. Personally, my policy on using TIFs, I have two TIFs, parts of two TIFs, not the whole district in the first ward, is to use them for schools. So we've built a playground at Chase School, a neighborhood school, 80% low income, 90% Latino and African American. We built a new playground there where they didn't have one. We built a new playground at Diego, as I mentioned, with TIF dollars. Another school, 90% African American and Latino, 80% low income. And then the third time I used TIF was to bring in a nursing school from the suburbs right into Humboldt Park, Wicker Park, that has 300 spots. Part of their TIF agreement is offering low-income scholarships to one booming field, right, is nursing. The nation is short of nurses, and we've got that school right in the first ward now. So I will only use TIF as of today, and probably moving forward, I only use TIF for education purposes.
Thank you, Alderman, for that question, and thank you, caller, for the question as well. Alderman, the summer is fastly approaching. How has gun violence affected the first ward?
Well, again, it's a very diverse ward. We have had some incidents of gun violence. I would say that we, for the most part, have a fairly safe and secure ward, but things do happen. Crime across the board in the first ward, which is part of the 14th and the 12th district, is at record lows. But that's tough to tell someone when their child is shot or a crime has happened. So we work very well with the CAPS programs. We have great community groups throughout the ward in terms of safety, and I don't shy away from it. I'm not the police, but I do have a responsibility when it comes to crime as an alderman. And so some of the things we've done, Monica, real quick, we have actually went in and asked the city to go in and do inspections, because a lot of the times this crime, at least in my ward, you can really look at one or two houses in the neighborhood, and we've demolished houses when they needed to be demolished, and we've sent in inspectors because there's usually violations at these gang houses and these drug houses. So that's one successful strategy. I also go on drive-arounds at late night with my commanders to point out things that people come to the alderman for their concerns. But overall, it's a great, safe place to be. But you're in the city. I think everyone would agree that you have to keep your eyes open.
Thank you, caller, for that question. We have another caller on the line. Caller, what is your question?
Good evening, Alderman. Will you ever think about the rest of your aldermen put this on the table? Some other cities have done this. They have body cams put on police officers, so we have a better enforcement in terms of policing.
In terms of policing, could the caller be a little more specific about the body cams for?
Well, there's some cities that have used body cams in terms of seeing what the police officers are doing. Are they being much more efficient? Can they manage them much better? And you have heard a lot of people in the past have said, called in the National Guard. This way, we'll know what our police officers are doing, and it'll protect the police officers and the citizens as well.
Sure, it's not a bad idea. I would have to look into it more. I want to say that also an organization that I was a part of and on the national board was the Campaign to End the Death Penalty. I organized a chapter in Wicker Park in the early 2000s when we were fighting for that, and obviously we do have abolition now. There were a lot of police abuse issues. Of course, John Burge, who I knew about 13 years ago when we were calling for his prosecution, and that happened. So, I applaud and bow down to the vast majority of our police officers. But if transparency and technology can help the few bad apples that perhaps aren't behaving properly, I would definitely support looking into that.
Thank you, caller, for that question. And we have just a couple minutes for another quick question from a caller.
Great.
Yes, good evening.
Good evening.
Quick question. I live in the neighborhood, and the Tribune or some other entity is always dropping off these large plastic bags filled with junk mail and other things in front of the property. I mean, and so I have a hard enough time, keeping in track with this, but I see neighbors as well who it's just littering the streets.
Absolutely.
Is there anything we can do about that?
Very good question. I've looked into this thoroughly because it disgusts me as well. And, obviously with the plastic bag ban I just passed, I'm very tuned to this. There is an opt-out. I don't have the website offhand, but I'll repost it on my Facebook tonight where you can go and very easily opt out of those. What I would really like to have is an opt-in. So you don't have to go opt out, but if you want these to be dropped off, these various discounts and these various papers, that you opt into it. The legal department has said that when other municipalities have tried to do that, the entities that do this have fought in court saying that their freedom of speech is being not upheld. And those huge phone books that get dropped off every year or every other year that we don't need anymore. There's an opt-out for that. I would really like an opt-in, but again, that's the law department's opinion. So I'm going to continue pushing that, but I'll post that on my Facebook, that the website where you can go and opt out of that stuff. And I've heard from other constituents it's worked very well.
Thank you, caller, for that question. Alderman, we have just a minute left. Is there any final words that you would like to tell the audience?
Well, I just really appreciate CAN TV having this forum, not only for myself, but others. Please get engaged. I do a satellite office every weekend. I rotate it around the ward almost every weekend at different festivals. So folks I want to be known as the most accessible alderman. My ward night's every Tuesday night at 2058 Northwestern. We don't shy away in the first ward from a lot of issues. And so please engage me. I will come to your house and talk to you and your neighbors about either local issues or more citywide issues. I'm very passionate about this. I love this job. And again, I appreciate Monica and Steve having me here this evening to talk a little bit about it.
Thank you, Alderman. And so if anybody has any questions, please feel free to contact Alderman Moreno at 773-278-0101. And thank you, Alderman, for appearing on Political Forum.
Of course. Good questions. Thank you.
Thank you, viewers, for your calls. Our telephone technician for today has been Steve. Please join us for another edition of Political Forum next Wednesday. Have a good evening.